Newspaper, Wednesday 22nd of February 2023, page 15. Regarding welfare, benefit claimants will be worse off. Many people on benefits will be worse off until 2025 due to a failure in payments keeping up with inflation, a think tank has said. The annual operating of benefits in April will, quote, merely take them back to around the real level they were at a year earlier, unquote, the Institute of Fiscal Studies, in brackets IFS, said. Hundreds of thousands of people could be better off if they earned less due to the way the government's cost of living payments will work. The organisation said real benefit rates were 7.6% lower in 2022 compared with their pre-pandemic levels in 2019 and will be 6.2% lower in 2023 and 2% lower in 2024, the IFS said. This is just my personal opinion after reading the article. So until 2025, due to a failure in payments keeping up with in line with inflation, so people on benefits and their payments are not keeping up with inflation. That has been confirmed by a think tank now. And the annual operating of benefits in April will merely take them back to around the real level they were at a year earlier. So basically, they're going back by a year. And that's been confirmed by the Institute of Fiscal Studies, IFS. 100,000 people could be better off if they earned less due to the way the government's cost of living payments will work, the organisation said. My personal opinion here is the way in which the whole structure of benefits and universal credit has to be in line with inflation, and the mission, in terms of mission statement, goals, objectives behind what is going to benefit someone who's on benefits to actually obtain a job. But the jobs they should be projected in terms of the jobs that should be offered should be jobs that have a long-term feasibility, not a job where a person is likely to be sacked in 1 month, 2 months or 3 months and then you continue the cycle of benefits again. No, there has to be have a longevity in terms of a long-term vision, that where a person is visibly going to stay in long-term work with an organisation that wants to keep someone who's been unemployed in their company with a vision of long-term employment. There are companies set up that gain millions just to help the unemployed obtain jobs. However, in my personal opinion, I think unemployed people are being misled, being given misinformation, misdirected, whereas the companies are making millions and still people are obtaining jobs through these companies, whereas the objective of the company employers that are coming is just probably to keep the employee within the firm for just 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and then the employment ends and then it becomes a vicious cycle. So therefore, anyone who's unemployed is being used as a short-term asset by employers rather than give them full-term employment rights, which I think is absolutely wrong. Someone who's unemployed should not be used as a pawn by services that are there to help the unemployed, or by future employees that see them as something you can just use and abuse and dispose of. No, I think that the whole structure of how jobs are obtained through the job centre employment services, that's apparently on their mission statements, say that they're specifically there to give jobs to the unemployed. It all needs reassessing, whereas millions and millions and millions can be saved by not having these organizations in place, and a watchdog, a special watchdog being put in place so that employers who want to misuse the unemployed are not allowed to do that. Where there is a high staff turnover, it needs to be monitored so that there is not a regressive pattern of high staff turnover or the misuse of anyone who's unemployed. The long-term plan should be for people to be in sustainable employment with a long-term vision to stay in employment. Here is where millions and millions can be saved by restructuring the organisations and monitoring the organisations that are being put in place, and also monitoring the employees that are coming to employ the unemployed, and actually see what the output is, and strict monitoring taking place. And actually fines should even be put in place by employers who misuse their unemployed, and those who have a staff turnover should not be allowed to even employ the unemployed. My personal opinion is that should not happen, where small firms who are looking for employing staff, they should be allowed to employ staff. You know, if it was on a short term, that's fine, but when there's big companies approaching the job centre to employ members of staff, but those companies are worth millions, yet they're using the people from the job centre, that is wrong. And that's where the job centre needs to step up, or have an action plan in place to monitor the kind of employees that are approaching the unemployed to work for them. And this is where the whole system needs to be restructured. Millions and millions can be saved by having one set organisation that offers employment to the unemployed, rather than having ad hoc or many different organisations having really good mission statements, goals, objectives, glossary, magazines that make everything look perfect, that we're going to give you a job that is in line with your qualifications, your skill base. But when you go into reality, that is not happening. Those same organisations are being paid millions to help someone who's unemployed to get back into employment. Therefore, that is exactly what should happen. But instead, it's like they're used as a money pool, which is absolutely wrong. Now, what I've said today, I'm actually going to expand on this myself in a future video. I've just touched on the topic now. There are many things that are wrong with the system that is in place at the moment, that the government has put in place at the moment. It's not just the points here, there are many other points. We should have systems in place that are in line with inflation, number one. Everything should be monitored, regulated correctly. The systems that are in place to provide a service should be monitored. And also there should be a feedback form which should be based on a point system, where if someone is unemployed and they're offered employment, for some reason, if someone is sacked or different terms and conditions over which their employment is ended, there has to be a feedback structure. Whereas if the job centre realise that a certain employee is using this unemployed, and that employer has a high staff turnover, therefore they should not be allowed to even come in the job centre and offer jobs to the unemployed, because there is no long-term vision there. It's like a 3-month cycle that is happening. With employment, we have one vision. But when someone is unemployed and they are going to employment, that is where they need assistance, guidance, and some goal setting as well. But there has to be a structure in place to monitor everything so that the objectives are healthy and no one is being misused, and that the organisations that come to recruit the unemployed are vetted properly. We are not just going to look at the glossy magazine covers or their posh mission statements or goals and objectives. No, there has to be, within the job centre, a certain complaints department set up, and there has to be a separate department as well that offers jobs that have a long-term aim to keep someone in employment. Because otherwise these statistics that if one person goes for a company that only has the vision of keeping them for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and then recruiting again, and they keep on recruiting, that is a manipulation of figures as well. Because in the figures it look like, oh, the unemployment figures have gone down. No, that same candidate is going to be, who was unemployed, will be coming back within the cycle of unemployment again in the next 3 months. And then therefore that employer should not be allowed to even approach the unemployed until they sort out their own recruitment crisis. And all these different organisations that are put in place that are giving millions and millions, let's save these millions and let's give that same structure and power back to the job centres where there's a central focus and it can be monitored properly. Otherwise, the way in which this country is going, or certain organisations are going, is the unemployed are not being given an effective, efficient service to get back into employment. That is happening. It's a vicious cycle, a 3-month cycle, and the person ends up being unemployed again. And who's benefiting from this? It's not the unemployed, it's actually the employer. So within the benefit system, there are lots of grey areas or lots of faults and failures that really need to be addressed, that are not being addressed. And because they're not being addressed, people are making millions of profit, which is absolutely wrong. What we should see is a service that is effective, a service that achieves its goals and objectives and really sets out to deliver what they say. We don't want lip service. What we need are proper services. We need to have services that you can trust. Services that have your best interests at heart. Where are those services for the unemployed? Yes, there are many companies set up that are supposed to aid and assist you during the process. But what happens when you end up with an employer that discriminates? End up with an employer that is biased, end up that employer that has, what if you end up with an employer that has alternative motives? There are big areas of concern here that cannot be avoided, cannot be ignored, because they are costing the taxpayer millions and millions. And if, as the politicians say, we're here to make savings, cut back services that are necessary, we need to take a closer look at exactly what are we offering the unemployed. It's very important. Only offer a service if it can deliver the goods. If it's not delivering the goods, if it's making a situation worse for people who are unemployed, then the biggest question is, why are we paying the millions? What are the millions being paid for? Who is benefiting from certain services? Because it's definitely not the unemployed. I'm going to come back on this topic and expand on it at a later point as well.